In this video, I'm going to show you how to set up a distillation apparatus. Here are the things that you're going to need. You want to have a temperature probe or a thermometer. I'm going to set this up with a temperature probe. You want to have 2 ring stands and 2 of these type of clamps. So how these clamps operate is this part connects to the ring stand, and then the other end has just got this little wing nut that tightens and loosens the clamp. So you want 2 of those. Of course, you're going to need your distillation apparatus in this box. You want to have a tube of vacuum grease that you can get access to. You need a little bit of grease for this. A meter stick is pretty helpful. And vacuum grease is a mess, so get yourself a little paper towel to wipe things off with. And then you'll need your burner from your lab cabinet. That would probably be the last thing. So the first thing we're going to do to get started is let's focus on just setting up the rings and the ring stands. Or the clamps and the ring stands, I should say. One of the clamps you should install so that the height is about 40 centimeters from the base. So just hold your meter stick up, measure up to 40 centimeters. There's almost a little mark on the side of the clamp that helps you with this. Set it at about 40 millimeters or centimeters. You don't have to be super exact, just get close. And then the other one you should put at about 25 centimeters from the base. So probably about there, be a good place to clamp. And then kind of set those in the background. Maybe just set them completely out of the way. Now we're going to assemble our apparatus itself. So you open up the box. There's a lot of packing peanuts in here. On top you should find 2 hoses. Set those aside for now. And then in the middle you'll find this is called the condenser tube. It's got 2 outlets, actually an inlet and an outlet, and hoses go on, the rubber hoses go on there. We'll do that later. You have a large flask, a 500 milliliter flask, round bottom. Be careful because this thing can roll off the table, so put it in a place where it can't do that. You have a smaller flask, 250 milliliter, also round, so put it in a place where it can't roll. You have this neck. This goes into the 500 milliliter flask, and this connects onto the condenser tube, and then there's a little clamp sort of here to hold your thermometer or temperature probe in place. You have this elbow, and this goes on the bottom of the condenser tube, and then it goes into the smaller flask to complete your apparatus. 4 of the things are in here, and these are little clips to hold everything together to make it stable so that you don't break glass and have things fall over the place. So those are the things that are in your kit. Now here's how to assemble them. First thing, take a little bit of vacuum grease, just about this is about all you need for everything. And on all of the surfaces that have a tapered, like a conical kind of a shape, just put a little bit of this vacuum grease. Just smear it around in there. So 2 places on this neck. One place on the condenser tube, at the bottom of the condenser tube, what's going to be the bottom. And 1 place on the elbow. And all the time when you're doing this, be super careful because this glass is fragile, kind of expensive, and we don't have a lot of it. So make sure that you're being as cautious as you possibly can be. So that provides a seal, and it also lubricates things a little bit better so that they go together pretty well. Now you probably have some grease on your fingers, so wipe that off best you can. And let's start putting this together. First thing to do, take your neck, put it into your 500 milliliter flask, and then turn it at least a half of a turn. Now we're going to clip these two pieces together using one of these clips. These clips all work the same way in every joint. You can see if you look at the clip that there's a wide end and a narrower end. And if you look at the joint, there's this lip that's wider, and then the piece that sets into that lip is narrower. So orient it so that the wide part is on the wide side and the narrow part's on the narrow side, which is kind of obvious. And there are two little tabs you can push on the side. Be real careful. You have to force it a little bit, but you don't want to push so hard that you break the glass. So this is now clipped together, and that's a fairly solid unit. Next thing we're going to do, we're going to take our condenser and fit that on there and do the same thing at the joint, just rotate it at least a half a turn. And then we're going to install a clip. So be real careful. At this point, because I'm developing a pretty big apparatus, I'm going to lay this on the ground so I don't drop it. So now I've got my neck attached to my large flask and my condenser's attached to the neck. Now I'm going to put the elbow on, put the joint in there, turn it at least a half a turn, put my clip wide side on the elbow, narrow side on the condenser, and then one last piece to put together, and that's the small flask. Install that on the end of the elbow, turn it at least a half a turn, and apply my clip. Okay, the next thing that I want to do is attach my two hoses. These hoses are a little bit too small for the barbs, and that's for a reason. It makes a nice tight fit. So you have to stretch the hose a little bit to get it to fit. This sometimes takes a little time to get it just right, and it's hard to do with gloves on. So at this point you may want to take your gloves off if you're wearing gloves, just so you can get a good grip on that piece of hose. It's helpful to have your partner hold it in place, and you just shove it on there a ways. So now I've got that hose connected. And then the other barb on the other end of the condenser, do the same thing. I'm going to open my hose up, stretch it onto the tube real carefully, and then push it on there so that it covers up a couple of those little barbs. The one on the bottom, the one closest to the small flask, this is going to have to go on the sink, and this is even a harder stretch, so get a good grip on it and then stick it on the bottom of the sink. Okay, now we're ready to assemble this to the clamps. So take the tall clamp, the one that you set to 40 centimeters, and put that near the large flask, and then the shorter one, the 25 centimeter height, put that near the smaller one. And this will go a lot easier for you if you have a partner than it's going to for me, because you can both work together. Open up those clamps and put them right on the necks of the flasks, like that. And then being sure that you're not over tightening so you don't risk breaking the glass, and you're holding everything stable. Tighten the clamps down so that they're good and secure, so this isn't going anywhere, but not over tight. So you should be able to move this whole apparatus like it's one unit. Okay, let's get this out of the way. Make sure there's no kinks here. If there does develop a kink, you're going to have to make sure that you take care of that. Okay, this is all assembled and ready to go. Now, you're going to need a burner for distillation. So set your burner under there, and the distance from the top of your burner to the bottom of the 500 milliliter flask should be just about the width of your hand. If it's much smaller than that, you want to carefully adjust the whole works up. If it's a lot bigger than that, you probably want to carefully adjust it down. One more piece I forgot. We have to put in our temperature sensor. So I'm going to take my temperature probe here, and if you look at the top of the neck, there's this red rubber and plastic apparatus. Insert your temperature probe in there, and then just carefully screw it downwards, and it will tighten up. You want to have your temperature probe set so that it's just about where the neck separates into the part that goes into the condenser. That's about the place where you want to hold your temperature probe. You can see that the probe is right about there at the Y joint.